They thought this 70-year-old woman would quietly disappear, surrendering her home and life without a fight, but with just one memory album and a few careless words from my grandson. I saw through their scheme. What they didn't know was that I'd spent my entire life navigating contracts, laws, and evidence, and once I decided to strike back, I never missed an opportunity. The photo of my empty bedroom labeled soon to be gone wasn't just a threat, it was their biggest mistake. My name is Margaret Lewis, and at 74 years old, I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at me. But that October evening, sitting at my own dining table, I realized how wrong I was. The mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier, the same table where my late husband Robert and I had shared 42 years of dinners, celebrations, and quiet conversations. Now, it felt foreign, adorned with Sophie's modern placemats and geometric centerpiece that clashed with everything this house represented. "Mom, you're not eating," Daniel said, pushing the salmon around his own plate. My son, 48 years old and still avoiding eye contact like he did when he broke my favorite vase at age 10, just admiring Sophie's cooking, I replied, though the fish tasted like cardboard in my mouth. Everything had tasted bland since they'd moved in 8 months ago, right after my minor stroke left me temporarily unable to drive. Sophie beamed from across the table, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light. "I'm so glad you're enjoying it, Margaret. I know how hard it must be, not being able to cook like you used to." The condescension dripped from her words like honey from a poisoned spoon. I'd been cooking just fine until she'd rearranged my entire kitchen, moving everything to more logical places where I couldn't reach them. "Actually, I made brownies this afternoon," I said, watching her smile falter. "They're cooling in the pantry." "Oh, Mom," Daniel finally looked up. "Sophie's been trying to help you maintain a healthier diet. Maybe skip dessert tonight?" Help. That word had become their weapon of choice. Sophie helped by replacing my comfortable armchair with a more supportive modern monstrosity. She helped by donating half my book collection to make room for her exercise equipment. She helped by scheduling unnecessary doctor's appointments where she'd whisper concerns about my declining capacity while I sat right there. The house felt different now. My grandmother's china had been packed away, too fragile for daily use. The family photos along the stairway had been replaced with abstract prints, less cluttered. Even the garden showed Sophie's influence. My roses pruned back severely to make room for her herb garden. "Before dessert," Sophie announced, clasping her hands together like an excited child, "I have something special planned." I watched her rise gracefully. Her designer dress, bought with whose money, I wondered, swishing as she walked to the sideboard. She'd been unusually pleasant all week, even letting me choose what to watch on television Tuesday night. Now I understood why. "What's the occasion?" I asked, though the tightness in my chest already knew this wasn't going to be pleasant. "No occasion," she said, returning with a wrapped package. "Just a little something I've been working on. A celebration of family." Daniel shifted in his seat, suddenly fascinated by his water glass. Upstairs, I could hear 12-year-old Evan's video game through the floor, the volume louder than usual, as if he'd been told to stay in his room. "How thoughtful," I said. Accepting the package, the wrapping paper was expensive, the bow elaborate. Sophie did nothing halfway when it came to appearances. "Open it," she urged, settling back into her chair with the satisfaction of a cat who'd cornered a mouse. My fingers worked slowly, partly from the arthritis she loved to point out, partly from a desire to delay whatever was coming. Inside was a photo album, leather-bound and heavy. The cover read, "1 year of family memories" in elegant gold lettering. "I thought it would be nice to document our first year together," Sophie said. "You know, all of us under one roof." Our first year, as if the previous 4 decades in this house hadn't existed, as if Robert and I hadn't raised 3 children here, hadn't planted that oak tree for our anniversary, hadn't built a life within these walls. "Go on," Daniel said quietly. "Look through it." So I did, turning each page with growing comprehension. This wasn't a family album. This was evidence of my erasure, documented in high resolution. The first page showed me in the kitchen at 6:30 in the morning, hair uncombed, making breakfast. Grandma's famous pancakes, the caption read, though I was clearly alone, no one else awake to eat them. Page 2, me doing laundry, arms full of everyone else's clothes. Page 3, me vacuuming while Sophie and Daniel cuddled on the couch, my couch, now reupholstered in her choice of fabric. Page 4, me washing dishes after Thanksgiving, back to the camera, while the family laughed at something on Daniel's phone in the living room. Each image was perfectly composed, professionally printed. Sophie had put effort into this cruelty. "Look how busy you've been," Sophie said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Always taking care of everyone." I turned more pages. Me weeding the garden while they had drinks on the patio, me folding towels, me sitting alone at the kitchen table with a cup of tea while life happened around me. Never with me. The photographer, Sophie, I assumed, had captured me as a ghost in my own home, present but irrelevant. "These are lovely," I lied, my voice steady despite the burn in my throat. "You have quite an eye for photography." "I took a class last spring," she said proudly. "Digital composition? The instructor said I had natural talent." While I was recovering from my stroke, apparently. How convenient. The photos continued their cruel narrative. Christmas morning, me in the corner watching them open gifts. New Year's Eve, me heading upstairs at 9:45 while they prepared to celebrate. Easter, me cooking alone while they attended Sophie's family brunch, the one I wouldn't enjoy because of all the noise. Then I reached the final page, my bedroom, my sanctuary. The room where Robert had died peacefully in his sleep 5 years ago, where I still kept his reading glasses on the nightstand, where his cologne still lingered faintly in the closet. But in the photo, it was empty. Stripped bare, the furniture gone, the walls stark white instead of the soft blue I'd painted them. Even the curtains, my mother's lace curtains, had vanished beneath the image. In Sophie's neat handwriting, soon to be gone. The silence stretched until Sophie's laugh shattered it. "Oh my God, your face! It's just a joke. Margaret, I was playing with some interior design software. Thought it would be funny to show a room makeover." "Hilarious," I managed, closing the album carefully. "Mom doesn't always get our humor," Daniel said, finally finding his voice. He reached for the wine bottle, refilling his glass with a shaking hand. "No," I said, looking directly at my son. "I get it perfectly." Sophie's smile faltered slightly. "It's just, you know how these apps work. You take a photo and it shows different design possibilities. I thought about redecorating that room. For guests. But I'm not a guest." I said. "Of course not." Sophie's voice pitched higher. "Your family. That's what this whole album is about. Family memories." I stood, holding the album. "If you'll excuse me, I need to use the powder room. Mom, we haven't had dessert," Daniel said. "The brownies will keep." I walked steadily to the downstairs bathroom, closed the door, and sat on the small vanity chair Robert had installed for me 20 years ago when my back first started aching. Through the door, I could hear urgent whispers. Then, unexpectedly, the door opened. Evan slipped inside, closing it quietly behind him. "Grandma," he whispered, his young face troubled. "I'm supposed to be upstairs." "What is it, sweetheart?" He glanced at the door, then back at me. "That picture, the empty room one. Mom showed it to Dad last week. She said—" He paused, clearly conflicted about tattling. "It's okay," I said gently. "You can tell me. She said you'd be gone soon, to a nice place where they take care of old people. She said I could have your room since it's bigger than mine." My heart hammered, but I kept my voice calm. "Did she say anything else?" "Dad said you wouldn't want to go. Mom said it didn't matter what you wanted anymore. That's not right. Is it, Grandma?" I pulled him into a hug, this sweet boy who still had a conscience despite his mother's influence. "No, sweetheart, it's not right, but don't worry about it, okay? Grandma's not going anywhere. Promise, promise. Now scoot back upstairs before they notice you're gone." After he left, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the helpless, elderly person Sophie saw. She was someone who'd survived 74 years, raised 3 children, buried a beloved husband, and built a life worth fighting for. They wanted me gone. They'd photographed my erasure like it was already a done deal. Well, Sophie had no idea who she was dealing with, but she was about to find out. I returned to the dining room with practiced calm, the album tucked under my arm. Sophie had already cleared the dinner plates, my grandmother's china nowhere to be seen, of course, and was setting out coffee cups. "Feeling better?" she asked, her concern as artificial as the sweetener she dumped in her coffee. "Much better," I said, retaking my seat. "Just needed a moment to appreciate your creativity." Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. He knew. My son, my firstborn, who'd cried in my arms after his first heartbreak, who'd called me every Sunday during college, who'd promised at his father's funeral that I'd never be alone. He knew what his wife was planning and had chosen her side. "So," Sophie said, settling back with her coffee, "what did you think of the album overall? I worked so hard on it." "It's very revealing," I said. "You've certainly captured a particular perspective." She preened, missing the edge in my voice. "I thought it would be nice for Evan to have these memories. You know, when he's older. When I'm gone." She meant when I'm locked away in whatever facility she'd already chosen. My house sold, my possessions scattered, my existence reduced to an inconvenient memory. "Speaking of Evan," Daniel finally said, "he has that science project due Monday. Sophie, didn't you say you'd help him with it? He can manage." Sophie waved dismissively. "He's old enough to be more independent. Like me, apparently. Old enough to be disposed of." I sipped my coffee, weak, the way Sophie preferred it, and studied them both. When had my son become this stranger? Was it gradual, or had Sophie's influence worked like poison? Slow but thorough. "Mom," Daniel said suddenly, "we've been thinking. Here it comes." "About what, dear?" Sophie jumped in. "About the future. This house is so big, and with your health concerns—" "What health concerns?" I interrupted. "Well, the stroke. 8 months ago, from which I've fully recovered, but the doctor said I needed to take it easy for a few weeks." Not that I was an invalid. Sophie's perfectly painted lips tightened. "We're just worried about you being alone during the day." "I'm not alone. You're here." "But I work," she said, though her work consisted of a part-time position at a boutique that she treated more like a social club. "And I've been taking care of myself and this house for decades," I replied. Daniel set down his cup too hard, coffee sloshing. "Mom, please, we're trying to help." "That word again, help. Are you?" I asked, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to erase me. "That's ridiculous," Sophie said, but her cheeks flushed. "Is it? My furniture disappears, my kitchen is rearranged, my photos are removed, and now this album, showing me as nothing more than unpaid labor in my own home." "You're overreacting," Daniel said, using the same tone he'd used when he was 16 and I'd caught him sneaking out. "Sophie put a lot of effort into that album." "Oh, I can see that. Especially the last page." Sophie's smile turned brittle. "I told you, that was just a joke." "Was it, or was it a preview?" The silence stretched taut. Outside, a dog barked. The grandfather clock in the hall, one of the few antiques Sophie hadn't managed to banish, chimed 9 o'clock. "I think," Sophie said slowly, "that this conversation is exactly why we're concerned. You're becoming paranoid, Margaret, seeing conspiracies where there's only love." "Paranoid," I repeated. "How convenient." "Mom," Daniel's voice cracked, "no one's trying to hurt you. We want what's best." "What's best for whom?" I stood, the album still in my hands. "Because from what Evan told me, what's best seems to involve me disappearing into a care facility while you take over my home." Sophie's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. "Evan shouldn't be eavesdropping on adult conversations. So you admit there have been conversations." "About options," Daniel said weakly. "Just options." "Options for disposing of me. For God's sake, Mother!" Daniel's mask finally slipped. "You're 74 years old. You had a stroke. You can't maintain this place forever." There it was. The truth. Raw and ugly. I see, I said quietly. And naturally, the solution is to pack me away so you can have the house. It's not like that, Sophie protested, but her eyes had already shifted to calculating damage control. Then tell me, I said, looking directly at my son, what exactly is it like? Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his wife. In that moment, I saw him clearly, weak, greedy, lost. The boy I'd raised was gone, replaced by this stranger who would sell his mother for square footage and convenience. I'm tired, I said, though I'd never felt more awake. I'm going to bed. Mom, wait. Good night, Daniel, Sophie. I walked upstairs slowly, not from frailty, but from the weight of realization. Behind me, their urgent whispers resumed. Planning damage control, no doubt, wondering if they'd shown their hand too soon. In my bedroom, still mine. Despite Sophie's plans, I sat on the bed Robert and I had shared and opened the album again. This time, I saw what I'd missed before, the date stamps on the photos. She'd been documenting my diminishment for months, building a case, but Sophie had made a crucial error. She'd assumed I was already beaten. I reached for the phone on my nightstand. I had calls to make, starting with Robert's old law partner, then the bank, then a few other people who should know exactly what was happening in this house. They wanted war, they'd get one, but it would be fought on my terms, with my rules, and I never lost when it came to protecting what was mine. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with Evan's revelation and the implications of that photo album. By 5:30 the next morning, I was dressed and ready. Sophie never rose before 8, and Daniel left for work at 7. That gave me a precious window. First, I retrieved the spare key to Robert's old study, now Sophie's meditation room, from behind the loose baseboard in the hallway. She'd changed the lock, but hadn't known about the hidden spare. Robert always said I was too careful, keeping extras everywhere. Today, that caution would serve me well. The room still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco beneath the cloying incense Sophie burned. His filing cabinets had been pushed to one corner, decorated with her crystals and sage bundles. I almost laughed at the irony. She'd turned his practical space into a shrine to wellness while plotting to lock away an actual human being. I went straight for our old files. Property deed, insurance papers, bank statements. Everything Sophie thought she'd cleverly reorganized was actually just moved. She didn't know I'd been watching her every modification to the house, memorizing where she put things. The house deed was exactly where I'd last seen it, still solely in my name. Robert and I had discussed adding Daniel years ago, but something always held me back. Mother's intuition? Perhaps. Thank God for that hesitation now. But it was the bank statements that made my blood run cold. 3 new credit cards in my name, opened within the last 4 months. Charges at stores I'd never visited, restaurants I'd never heard of, online purchases for amounts that made my eyes water, nearly $30,000 in debt I knew nothing about. My hands shook as I photographed each statement with my phone. Then I found something worse. Paperwork for a home equity loan. Partially filled out, but not yet submitted. The loan amount would effectively mortgage the house I owned outright, putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in liquid cash at someone's disposal. The signature line was blank, but I recognized Sophie's handwriting in the margins. Practicing my name. Forgery, fraud, elder abuse. I heard Daniel's alarm sound upstairs and quickly gathered what I needed, back in my room. I locked the door and opened my laptop, the one Sophie didn't know I had, hidden in a hat box in my closet. She assumed I was technology illiterate because I let her set up the household computer. Another useful misconception. The credit card company's websites confirmed my worst fears. The cards were real, the charges mounting daily. Sophie had been careful, keeping each card just below the limit, making minimum payments from my checking account to avoid red flags. But she was accelerating lately. Yesterday alone showed $500 at a jewelry store. I heard Daniel's footsteps in the hallway, his morning routine as predictable as clockwork. Shower, shave, coffee, gone. He never checked on me anymore. By 7:15, his car had pulled away. Sophie would sleep another hour at least. I went back to the study. This time, I searched her spaces, the meditation cushions, the decorative boxes, the drawer in the small table where she kept her journaling supplies, and there, wrapped in a silk scarf, was a notebook, not a journal, a plan. Sophie's neat handwriting filled pages with research on nursing homes, their costs, admission requirements. She'd made pro and con lists for different facilities, noting which ones required power of attorney versus those that would accept voluntary admission from a family member for someone showing signs of dementia. One entry made me sink into Robert's old chair. M. Getting more difficult. D. Finally seeing the necessity. Estimate 3. 4 months before we can make the move. House valued at 1.2 M. After sale. Nursing home costs covered for 10-plus years, leaving approximately $800K. D. Agrees to 60/40th split to account for my management efforts. Management efforts. She was calculating her cut of my life's work like a real estate commission. The notebook also contained contact information for a doctor I'd never heard of, with notes. Willing to evaluate for competency, emphasized importance of family observations in diagnosis. A bought doctor. She was thorough, I'd give her that. The final pages held sample signatures, my name written over and over in different styles, some matching my handwriting almost perfectly. She'd been practicing for months. I photographed every page, my phone camera clicking quietly in the morning light. Then I carefully returned everything exactly as I'd found it. Sophie was observant in her own way. Any disturbance would alert her. Back in my room, I unlocked my phone and scrolled through my contacts. First, the bank. The fraud department opened at 8, 20 minutes to wait. Then Medicare, to check if any claims had been filed under my name for treatments I hadn't received. The credit bureaus, to freeze my credit. The police, though I'd need more than photos to build a case. And most importantly, James Morrison, Robert's former law partner and the sharpest legal mind I knew. He'd handled Robert's estate, knew our finances inside and out. He'd also gone through his own battle when his children tried to force him into retirement to take over his practice. Never let them make you feel guilty for protecting what's yours, Margaret. He'd told me at Robert's funeral. The vultures circle when they smell weakness, even if they share your blood. I thought he was being cynical. Now I understood. A door opened down the hall. Sophie, up earlier than usual. I heard her padding toward the bathroom, then the shower running. 30 minutes before she'd emerge, perfectly styled for her part-time job, I dialed James's personal cell. He answered on the second ring, alert despite the early hour. Margaret? Everything all right? No, I said quietly. But it will be? I need your help. James, it seems I have a pest problem that needs immediate attention. His voice sharpened. How bad? Credit fraud, forgery, and a documented plan to have me declared incompetent, and that's just what I found this morning. Jesus, when can you come to the office? This afternoon. I need to be careful. They're watching me. Understood. Margaret, listen carefully. Document everything. Tell no one else what you're doing. And if you feel unsafe, I'm safe for now. They need me functional until they can make their move. Smart woman, 2 o'clock? I'll be there. I hung up as Sophie's shower turned off. Time to play my part a little longer, the befuddled old woman. Seeing conspiracies where there was only concern. Let them think last night's confrontation was just paranoid rambling. But while they plotted my removal, I was building my case. They'd shown their hand too early. Drunk on their own cleverness. By the time they realized their mistake, it would be far too late. Over breakfast, I played my role perfectly. Sophie found me in the kitchen, staring blankly at the coffee maker she'd installed, the one with 20 buttons when all I wanted was a simple pot of coffee. Oh, Margaret, she sighed, reaching past me to press the right combination. Let me help you. The machine can be confusing. Thank you, dear, I said, letting my voice waver slightly. I don't know what's wrong with me lately. Everything seems so complicated. I saw the gleam in her eyes, the quick text she sent, probably to Daniel. The confused old lady was performing exactly as expected. After she left for work at 9, I made my calls. The bank's fraud department was horrifyingly efficient once I provided the account numbers. Yes, 3 cards had been opened using my social security number. Yes, they'd need a police report. Yes, they would freeze the accounts immediately. Medicare was next. 2 claims filed for in-home physical therapy I'd never received, another for cognitive evaluation at a clinic across town. Building a paper trail of my supposed decline, the credit bureaus took longer. But by 11, my credit was frozen solid. No new accounts could be opened without my direct authorization. Then I called Patricia Henley, a police detective who'd worked with Robert on several cases. She listened to my story without interruption. "Mrs. Lewis, this is serious. Can you come to the station today? Tomorrow would be better. I need to secure more evidence first. Don't wait too long. And Margaret, be careful. People get desperate when money's involved." My next call required more delicacy. Golden Years Assisted Living, the facility marked as Sophie's top choice in her notebook. "Hello," I said, affecting a slight confusion in my voice. "My daughter-in-law, Sophie Lewis, said she'd made arrangements for me. I'm Margaret Lewis, and I'm afraid I've forgotten the details." "Oh yes, Mrs. Lewis." The receptionist's voice brightened. "Mrs. Sophie Lewis placed a deposit 6 months ago for our premium suite. She said you were very excited about joining our community." 6 months ago, when I was recovering from my stroke, vulnerable and dependent. "Could you remind me of the details? My memory isn't what it used to be." I listened as she outlined the plan. Private room, full care package, meals and activities. The cost was staggering, $8,000 a month, paid annually in advance. "Mrs. Sophie Lewis said the house sale would cover everything," the receptionist added helpfully. "She seemed very concerned about your well-being. Such a devoted daughter-in-law." "Yes," I managed. "She's certainly devoted to something." I ended the call and made one more. "Dr. Harrison Vance," the name from Sophie's notebook. His receptionist was less forthcoming. "I'm sorry, we can't discuss patient information." "I'm not a patient yet," I interrupted. "My daughter-in-law, Sophie Lewis, said she'd scheduled an evaluation for me. I need to confirm the date." A pause. "I show a tentative booking for next month. But Dr. Vance needs to review the family's preliminary assessment first." Family's preliminary assessment, not medical records or referrals from my actual doctor. Just Sophie's word that I needed evaluation. "Thank you," I said. "I'll have Sophie confirm the details." By noon, I'd built a clear picture. This wasn't a sudden plan born of opportunity. It was a long con, methodically executed. While I'd grieved Robert, struggled with my health, tried to welcome them into my home, Sophie had been laying groundwork for my removal. At 1:45, I called a cab. Sophie tracked my car usage through a safety app she'd installed on my phone, but she didn't know about the burner phone I'd bought months ago when her monitoring became obvious. James Morrison's office occupied the top floor of a building downtown. All leather and dark wood, and the scent of justice served cold. He listened to my evidence, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. "This is elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy," he said when I finished. "We need to move fast. First, new power of attorney documents naming me as your advocate if you become incapacitated. Second, we file charges. Third, we get them out of your house." "What about Daniel?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "He's complicit. The text messages alone show knowledge of the scheme." James's voice softened. "I'm sorry, Margaret, I know this is hard." "He chose his side," I said. "Now I choose mine." We spent 2 hours documenting everything, creating affidavits, preparing legal documents. James's assistant notarized my new power of attorney, medical directives, and a codicil to my will that explicitly disinherited anyone convicted of crimes against me. "I'll file the criminal complaint tomorrow," James said. "Tonight, gather any remaining evidence. Can you record conversations in Minnesota?" "One-party consent state," I said. Robert had taught me well. "Good. Get them talking. The more evidence, the stronger our case." As the cab drove me home, I felt the weight of what was coming. Tonight would be the last night they'd sleep in my house. Tomorrow, the police would arrive with warrants. Sophie would be arrested at her boutique job, Daniel at his office. Professional, public, humiliating. But first, I needed one more piece of evidence. Sophie had been careless in her notebook, mentioning a storage unit where she kept documentation, banking on my supposed ignorance. She'd left the key in her jewelry box. I had the cab drop me at the facility. Unit 47B was small but revealing. Boxes of my personal documents she'd stolen, practice forgeries, and most damningly, a folder labeled post-transition. And inside were real estate listings for condos in Florida, a business plan for an interior design firm funded with my money, and printed emails between Sophie and someone named Derek about our fresh start once the old lady's handled. Not Daniel, Derek. I photographed everything, replaced it exactly, and took one item, a photo of my grandson Evan that she'd stolen from my album. He didn't deserve to be part of this ugliness. The cab driver, an elderly man himself, noticed my tears on the ride home. "You okay, ma'am?" "I will be," I said. "Sometimes you have to cut out the cancer to save your life." He nodded knowingly. "Family?" "Former family. The worst kind of betrayal. But you look like a fighter." "I am," I said, clutching the photo of Evan. "I definitely am." Back home by 4:30, I found Sophie in the kitchen preparing dinner as if she hadn't spent the day shopping with my stolen credit cards. "Margaret, where have you been? I was worried." "Just running errands," I said mildly. "Can I help with dinner?" Her smile was magnanimous. "Of course. You can set the table. Use the everyday dishes." Because my grandmother's china was already packed away somewhere, waiting for my departure. "Of course." "Dear," I said, "whatever you think is best." Tomorrow, she'd learn exactly what I thought was best. But tonight, I'd give her one last performance of the week. Manageable old woman she thought she could destroy. The table was set. The trap was ready. All that remained was the spring. That evening, I was a model of compliance. I complimented Sophie's overcooked pasta, nodded when Daniel explained why they needed to replace my outdated refrigerator, and even agreed when Sophie suggested I might be too tired to join them for their evening TV shows. "You're right," I said, touching my temple. "I think I'll go to bed early." "Good idea," Sophie said, already dismissing me. "We'll keep the volume down." In my room, I prepared meticulously. Every piece of evidence was photographed and backed up to 3 different cloud services. James had insisted on redundancy. Sophie seemed tech-savvy enough to try destroying evidence if cornered. I organized everything into folders on my laptop: the fraudulent credit cards, the forged signatures, the nursing home deposit, the storage unit contents, Sophie's notebook. Then I created a master document explaining the timeline, something the police and prosecutors could follow easily. At 10 o'clock, I heard them come upstairs, their bedroom door closed, and I waited another hour before making my move. The house at night had been my domain for over 40 years. I knew which floorboards creaked, which doors needed extra pull, which stairs to avoid. I moved through my own home like a ghost, fitting, since that's what Sophie had tried to make me. Back in Robert's study, I used my phone's flashlight to search more thoroughly. If Sophie had been this meticulous, there had to be more evidence. And there, taped under the meditation table, was a manila envelope. Inside were printouts of my medical records from the hospital, with handwritten notes in the margins. Sophie had highlighted mentions of confusion and disorientation, standard post-stroke symptoms that had resolved within days. But her notes suggested a pattern of ongoing decline. There was also a draft letter, supposedly from me, requesting to be placed in Golden Years facility for my own safety. The handwriting was an excellent forgery, though not perfect. She'd even included touches like shaky letters and crossed out words to suggest mental deterioration. But the real prize was at the bottom, a life insurance policy I'd never seen before, taken out 8 months ago, $1 million. With Daniel as the beneficiary and Sophie as the contingent beneficiary. The signature was mine, forged, but convincing. They weren't just planning to steal my house, they were betting on my death. I photographed everything, my hands steady despite the rage burning through me. Then I found one more thing that made my blood freeze. A small bottle of pills hidden behind Sophie's incense. The label was partially removed, but I could make out azepam, some kind of sedative. Had they been drugging me? I thought back to the unusual fatigue I'd felt recently, the afternoon naps I'd never needed before, always after Sophie brought me tea. I pocketed the bottle. Evidence. Back in my room, I uploaded everything to James's secure server. Then I opened my recording app and placed the phone in my robe pocket. Tomorrow morning would bring confrontation, and I wanted every word captured. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, thinking about Daniel as a baby, the way he'd gripped my finger with such trust. When had that trust turned to greed? When had my son become someone who could plot his mother's destruction for money? At 5:30 in the morning, I rose and dressed carefully. Professional slacks, a good blouse, my mother's pearl necklace. If the police were coming to my home, I would look like what I was, a respectable woman defending her life, not a confused old lady who needed help. I made coffee, real coffee, in my old percolator that Sophie had hidden in the basement. The familiar ritual calmed me. Then I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and the evidence folder, waiting. Sophie appeared first, dressed for work but moving differently. Nervous energy radiated from her. "Margaret, you're up early." Her eyes went to the folder. "What's that?" "Just some paperwork," I said calmly. "Sit down, Sophie. We need to talk." "I have to get to work." "No, you need to sit down." Something in my voice made her comply. She perched on the edge of a chair, ready to flee. "Where's Daniel?" I asked, getting dressed. "Margaret, what is this about?" I opened the folder and slid the first photograph across the table. Her notebook, the page about the house value and their split clearly visible. Sophie's face went white. "Where did you—" "That's private property, like my credit cards." I slid the next photo over. "Or my medical records, another photo. Or my forged signature, another. Or this interesting life insurance policy." Each image landed like a blow. Sophie's carefully styled facade cracked, revealing something ugly underneath. "Daniel," she called, voice high and panicked. "Daniel, get down here." My son appeared in the doorway, half-dressed, took in the scene and froze. "Mom?" "Sit," I commanded. He sat. "Your wife has been busy," I said, spreading more photos across the table. Credit fraud, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and you knew all about it. Mom, this is— Stop. I held up my hand. "I have the texts between you. I have the emails. I have the storage unit she kept, including correspondence with someone named Derek about your fresh start." Daniel's head snapped towards Sophie. "Derek? Who's Derek?" So he didn't know everything. How fitting that there was no honor among thieves. "Focus," I said coldly. "You two have exactly 1 hour to pack your belongings, your actual belongings, nothing you've stolen, and leave my house. The police will be here at 8 to arrest you both, so I suggest you hurry." "You can't do this," Sophie sputtered. "This is our home too." "No," I said, "it's my home. My name on the deed, my life built within these walls. You're trespassers who happen to share my food while plotting my destruction. Mom, please." Daniel tried. We can explain." "Explain what? How you plan to drug me, declare me incompetent, and lock me away? How you've already spent $30,000 on credit cards in my name? How you put a deposit on a nursing home 6 months ago?" I stood, gathering my evidence. James Morrison is my lawyer. He has everything, every photo, every document, every piece of evidence. The police have been fully briefed. Your only choice now is whether you're arrested here, in front of Evan, or somewhere else. "You can't take my son," Sophie shrieked. "I'm not taking anyone, but I won't have him watch his parents arrested in their pajamas. Get out of my house, now." Daniel was crying, weak, manipulative tears. "Mom, I'm your son. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything," I said, "until you decided I was worth more dead than alive." I pulled out the bottle of pills. "Oh, and Sophie? The lab will be very interested in what you've been putting in my tea." She lunged for the bottle, but I stepped back, phone visible in my hand. Everything's being recorded, I said. Every word, every threat, every admission. So please, continue. They looked at each other, these conspirators who'd shared my table while planning my disposal. Then, without another word, they fled upstairs. I sat back down with my coffee and waited. 45 minutes later, they dragged suitcases down the stairs. Sophie wouldn't look at me. Daniel tried once more. Mom, this is insane. You're overreacting. We just wanted to help. The police will determine that, I said. Evan is welcome here any time. You two are not. If you come back, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. You'll regret this, Sophie hissed. The only thing I regret, I said, is letting you into my home in the first place. They left, Sophie's car peeling out of the driveway. I watched from the window until they were gone, then called James. It's done. They're out. Good. Patricia Henley will be there soon with the warrants. Are you safe? I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. The house felt different already. Lighter, cleaner, mine again. I walked through each room, seeing what needed to be reclaimed. My photos would go back on the walls. My furniture would return. My life would resume. They'd thought I was weak because I was old. They'd learned otherwise, and this was only the beginning. Detective Patricia Henley arrived at exactly 8 o'clock with 2 officers. I had fresh coffee ready and the dining room table cleared for their review of evidence. Margaret, Patricia said warmly, though her eyes were all business, I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm not, I said firmly. I'm glad I caught them before they succeeded. We sat at the table where, just days ago, Sophie had presented her cruel photo album. Now it held the printed evidence of their crimes, organized and labeled with the precision Robert had taught me. Walk me through it, Patricia said, recorder running. I started from the beginning, the stroke, their moving in, the gradual changes. Patricia took notes as I showed her each piece of evidence, her expression growing darker with every revelation. This bottle, she said, holding up the pills. You believe they were drugging you? Sophie always brought me tea in the afternoon. I started feeling unusually tired about 3 months ago, always after tea time, when I found those pills hidden in her meditation room. It made sense. We'll test them, and we'll need a blood sample from you. Whatever you need. One of the officers had been photographing the evidence. The other took my formal statement, asking detailed questions about dates, times, amounts. I was grateful for my meticulous records. The storage unit, Patricia said. We'll need to search it. I handed her the key. Unit 47B at Secure Store on Maple. Sophie's name is on the rental, but she was storing my stolen documents there. And this Derek person mentioned in the emails? I don't know him, but from the context, it seems Sophie was planning to leave Daniel once she had the money. Patricia shook her head. They always turn on each other? My phone rang. James Morrison, Margaret, they've been arrested. Daniel at his office, Sophie at the boutique, both in custody. And Evan? My grandson was innocent in all this. School was notified. The principal will keep him there until arrangements are made. Do you want him to stay with you? Of course. He's always welcome here. After I hung up, Patricia stood. We have what we need for now. The district attorney will be in touch. Margaret, you did everything right. The documentation is thorough. I learned from my husband. He always said, document everything. Patricia finished with a smile. Robert trained half the force. We miss him. So do I. But he taught me well. After they left, I stood in my kitchen, truly mine again, and called Evan's school. The principal was understanding. Mrs. Lewis, Evan's in my office. He knows something's happened. Would you like to speak with him? Please. There was a shuffling. Then Evan's scared voice. Grandma? Hi. Sweetheart, I know today is confusing, but you're safe. Your parents had to go away for a while. Would you like to stay with me? Are they in trouble? His voice was small. Yes, I said honestly. They did some things they shouldn't have, but that's not your fault, and it doesn't change how much I love you. Can I really have your room? He asked, then quickly added, I mean, not your room. I don't want you to go away. Mom lied about that, right? Yes, she lied, and you can have the guest room. We'll redecorate it however you want. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise, I'll pick you up after school and we'll get pizza for dinner. How does that sound? Okay. Grandma, I'm glad you're staying. Me too, sweetheart. The next hours were a whirlwind. I called a locksmith to change every lock, password protected all my accounts, arranged for a cleaning service to deep clean Sophie's meditation room. I wanted every trace of her gone. Then I went to the bank in person. The manager, horrified by the fraud, helped me close all compromised accounts and open new ones. The fraudulent charges would be reversed, though it might take time. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Mrs. Lewis, she said, is there anything else we can do? Actually, yes. I want to set up a college fund for my grandson, something they can't touch, even if they somehow get out of this. By 2:00, I was exhausted but exhilarated. My house was secure, my finances protected, my grandson safe. I made one more stop, the storage facility. The police had already been there. Yellow tape across Unit 47B, but I wasn't there for evidence. I went to the main office. I need to rent a unit, I told the clerk, something climate-controlled. An hour later, I'd moved all of Sophie's belongings from my home into storage unit 12A, her meditation supplies, her designer clothes, her jewelry, her books on interior design, everything packed neatly, labeled clearly. I even included the photo album she'd made, that cruel documentation of my supposed irrelevance. I prepaid for 6 months and had the receipt sent to James Morrison's office. I wasn't stealing, merely storing. Let her lawyers argue about retrieving her possessions while she faced federal charges. Back home, I walked through each room, reclaiming my space. My photos went back on the walls. My grandmother's china returned to the dining room cabinet. The ugly, modern furniture got pushed to the garage. Goodwill could pick it up tomorrow. By the time I needed to collect Evan, the house looked like home again. He was quiet in the car, processing everything. I didn't push. At home, he walked through the rooms, noticing the changes. It looks like before, he said finally, like when Grandpa was alive. Is that okay? He nodded, then suddenly hugged me tight. I'm sorry I told you about the room thing. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Oh, sweetheart, I held him close. You didn't cause anything. You helped me. You told the truth when it mattered. Mom always said lying was bad, he said against my shoulder. But she lied all the time. Sometimes people lose their way, I said carefully. But that doesn't mean you will. You have a good heart. We ordered pizza and ate it on the good china, just to spite Sophie's ghost. Evan even laughed when I suggested ice cream for dessert at 8:30 at night. Mom never let me eat past 8, he said. Well, Grandma's house has different rules, better rules. As he got ready for bed in the guest room, his room now, he asked, Will Mom and Dad go to jail? I don't know, I answered honestly. They'll have to face consequences for what they did, but whatever happens, you'll be safe here. Good, he said simply. I like it here better anyway. After he fell asleep, I sat in my living room, my real living room with my furniture and photos and memories intact. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, questions, and the long process of justice. There would be trials, testimony, and difficult conversations with Evan about his parents' choices. But tonight, my house was mine again. My grandson was safe under my roof. The would-be thieves were behind bars. They'd thought I was just a weak old woman, ready to be discarded. They'd learned that some old women have steel spines and long memories, and I was just getting started. 6 months later, I stood in my garden, watching Evan help me plant new roses where Sophie's herb garden used to be. The morning sun warmed my face as I handed him another plant, his hands now steady and sure in the soil. Grandpa would have liked these, he said, patting dirt around the roots. He would have, I agreed. Yellow roses were his favorite. Inside, the house hummed with life again. Evan's laughter filled rooms that had grown too quiet. His friends came over after school, their bicycles scattered across the lawn like Robert and I had always imagined when we bought this place. The trials had been swift. Sophie pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse after Derek testified against her in exchange for immunity. Turns out he was her personal trainer, 10 years younger. waiting for his payday. She got 8 years federal time. No parole. Daniel fought the charges at first, claiming he was manipulated, that he never meant for it to go so far. But the text messages were damning, especially one where he'd written, "Just a few more months and we'll be set for life. Mom's getting worse every day." Except I wasn't getting worse. I was getting stronger. He got 5 years state time, eligible for parole in 3 during sentencing. He'd looked at me with tears in his eyes, mouthing, "I'm sorry." I'd simply turned away. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. The house was fully mine again, legally reinforced with new documents that would prevent any future attempts. James Morrison had made sure of that, creating an ironclad trust that protected both my assets and Evan's future. "Grandma," Evan called from the garden. "Look, there's already a bud." I smiled, joining him to admire the tiny yellow promise of bloom. That's because the roots were already strong. They just needed the right environment to thrive. He understood metaphors now. This boy who'd grown 6 inches and gained a wisdom no 13-year-old should need. Like us? Exactly like us. The financial mess had been sorted, every fraudulent charge reversed, every stolen document recovered. Sophie's storage unit had yielded more evidence of her schemes, apparently. I wasn't her first target. 2 previous elderly employers had suffered similar fates, though neither had fought back. They were fighting now, encouraged by my case. "Can we make lemonade?" Evan asked, dirt smudged on his cheek. "The real kind, not from powder." "Of course. You know where the lemons are." He ran inside, screen door banging, a sound that would have brought Sophie's sharp criticism. Now it just sounded like home. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Henley. "Thought you'd want to know. Sophie's appeal was denied. She's staying put." Good. I found Evan in the kitchen, carefully cutting lemons with the knife skills I'd taught him. No more helpless males in this family. "Grandma," he said thoughtfully, "do you think Dad will want to see me when he gets out?" "I don't know, sweetheart. That will be his choice to make. And mine too, right? And yours too." We made lemonade in the old pitcher, sweet and tart and real. We drank it on the porch, watching the neighborhood kids play basketball across the street. Normal life, precious in its simplicity. "I'm glad you fought back," Evan said suddenly. "Mom always said you were too old to understand things, but you understood everything." "Age isn't weakness," I said. "Mo, sometimes it's the opposite. Years teach you to see patterns, to trust your instincts, to know when someone's lying. And to keep evidence," he added with a grin. "That too." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of peach and gold, I thought about the photo album Sophie had made, that final image of my empty room, labeled "Soon to be gone." She'd been half right. Something was gone. The false family that had tried to destroy me, the parasites who'd seen my age as vulnerability, my trust as stupidity, my love as something to exploit. But I remained. Stronger than before, surrounded by truth instead of lies, teaching my grandson that family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty, honor, and protecting those who can't protect themselves. "Grandma," Evan said as we headed inside for dinner, "thank you for not giving up. Thank you for telling me the truth when it mattered." That night, as I tucked him in, a ritual he still allowed despite being 13, he asked one more question. "Do you think they ever really loved us, Sanurn?" I considered lying, softening the blow, but he deserved honesty. "I think they loved what we could give them, but that's not real love. Real love protects. It sacrifices. It builds up instead of tears down." He nodded, understanding more than any child should. "Like you and Grandpa, like me and Grandpa, and like you and me. Forever, forever." I closed his door quietly and walked to my own room, still mine, still exactly where I belonged. On the nightstand sat a new photo, Evan and me in the garden, both muddy and laughing, planting those roses that would bloom for years to come. They thought I was weak because I was old. They thought I was finished because I was alone. They were wrong on both counts. I sat at Robert's old desk and opened my laptop. There was an email from a woman in Phoenix. Another senior whose daughter-in-law was showing suspicious interest in her finances. She'd read about my case and wanted advice. I began typing. Document everything, trust your instincts, and remember, you're not weak just because you're old. You're powerful because you've survived everything life has thrown at you. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. The house settled around me, peaceful in the gathering darkness. Somewhere upstairs, Evan turned in his sleep, safe and loved, in the garden. The roses held their buds close, waiting for tomorrow's sun. And in my heart, where Sophie had tried to plant doubt and Daniel had sown betrayal, something else grew instead. Not forgiveness, some things are unforgivable. Not forgetting, the lessons were too valuable, but acceptance and strength and the absolute certainty that I would protect what was mine until my last breath. They'd wanted me gone, erased, reduced to nothing but a memory and a bank account. Instead, I'd reclaimed everything. My home, my dignity, my family, my life, and I was just getting started. Because the best revenge isn't just surviving those who try to destroy you, it's thriving despite them, building something better from the ashes of their greed, and showing the world that some old women don't go quietly into anybody's good night. We fight, we win, and we make damn sure everyone knows it. The stars came out, one by one, over my house, my home, my victory, and I smiled. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts. Your experiences and perspectives make our community richer.